Someday this journey will be remembered as our legacy west.
According to American myth, Jim Bridger threw a rock across the Sweetwater River, and where it landed, it grew and grew until it became this massive landform known as Independence Rock. Apparently, William Sublette and other trappers camped here on the 4th of July in 1830 and christened it with that name. The pioneers who later traveled this area found the name fitting, for they knew they had to reach this landmark by the 4th of July if they were to be able to cross Wyoming and Utah safely before the coming of winter. Pioneer journals record that this was a joyful place, a place of refuge and protection, a firm foundation on which the people climbed and played and inscribed their names into the bedrock, a place of peace and rest for weary travelers.
Pioneers were land-bound creatures, and to have followed across a flat land of Nebraska with very little vista, and to be able to come up to a place like this, look back where you've been, and sit here by Sweetwater and look forward to the kind of craggy and somewhat intimidating mountains. It must have been awesome and a little bit frightening at the same time.
There is an ascending corridor of land between Casper and South Pass that could truly be considered the crucible of the Mormon pioneers. Spanning close to 160 miles, it's definitely one of the most deceptively scenic passages on the entire trail, blessing the eye with such daily landmarks as Independence Rock, Devil's Gate, Split Rock Mountain, Rocky Ridge, the winding Sweetwater River, and the majestic valleys beneath the Wind River Mountains and the Oregon Buttes. Though the corridor presented little difficulty for the wagon trains in general, for two of the handcart companies, it would prove to be a refiner's fire.
Great numbers of the poor had joined the church in the old countries and were very anxious to gather to Zion, but they had no funds. Why, the cost of wagons and animals and food was more than they or the church could bear. The idea was hit upon to reduce these necessities by having them bring handcarts. Thus they would arrive much quicker, at much less cost, and be stronger when they arrived. I told them to gird up your loins and walk through.
For one thing, Brigham noticed that nearly everybody walked across the plains anyway, and here were thousands of people in England who wanted to come to Zion, and he thought this was one solution to the problem of transportation.
After having pulled a handcart almost 1,000 miles, members of the reenactment company can now empathize with those predecessors who paved the way 150 years ago. Certainly the struggles of the present group cannot be compared to the sufferings of some of those original companies, but the similarities of their modern efforts have blessed them with a sensitive perspective of the original handcart pioneers. John Dew feels that identifying affinity to forefathers who originally resided in Scotland.
From Scotland we came for the gospel's name, westward we're bound till Zion is found. I just thought that while I was coming across the trek to celebrate my pioneer ancestry and all my Mormon ancestry, I could also come and celebrate my Scottish ancestry at the same time. So sometimes I dress up in a kilt and walk around and stuff like that, and it's fun to do because it just celebrates two things at the same time. I think that if I was in one of the original ones that I came across, I almost certainly would have died there because of my physical frailty. I'm going to walk into the valley on July 22nd, and I'm going to feel great about it. But it's going to be bittersweet because we've made so many friends here, and that day we get home into the valley, we're going to see our family, but it's also a goodbye, to all the great friends that we've made out here, and even if we see each other again, it's never going to be the same.
Breeze is so busy it don't miss a tree, and an old weeping willow is laughing.
Sometimes it really is the singing songs that get us to the end of the day. We'll go on those marathon days, 30 miles or whatever it is they tell us. And by the end of the day, we're so tired, and You just focus on putting one foot in front of the other. But then when someone starts singing a song, and a few others join in and you start singing, you start to forget the pain.
In June of 1856, the first of 10 handcart companies left Iowa City for the Salt Lake Valley. Though the trek was grueling for each group, the majority of the companies would arrive safely in Utah. But in the highlands of Wyoming, storms of late autumn caught the Willie and Martin handcart companies at their most vulnerable. They had left Florence, Nebraska on August 17th and 27th, respectively, more than 3 months later than the ideal departure date.
The handcart experience proved to be very good. The first company that came through, the second company that came through, the third company that came through. Even if you discount the experience of those two companies that got caught in the mountains in Wyoming, the handcart experience was successful enough and popular enough that they did have handcart companies the next year and the next year.
We often forget about the other 8 companies that brought nearly 5,000 people safely, if laboriously, to Zion. But the drama of those two companies, I think, has caught the imagination of most people, both those who have written about it in a literary way and those historians who have focused on it, because it is a tragic episode in the whole story of the Western Trail.
Brother Franklin Richards came to me and informed me that he had passed companies yet on the plains. I had no idea this was the case because I'd not supposed anyone would leave at such a late date in the season. So in conference the next day, I told the brothers and sisters exactly what was needed and that speed was of the utmost to provide a rescue for our people in peril. Within 2 days, we had 16 wagons loaded with food and supplies headed out to deliver to the people on the plains.
Shortly after Brigham Young received news that the handcart companies were in trouble, he made a great effort to create these rescue parties. My great-grandfather Harrison Sperry was contacted, and according to the records, he and 3 others then left that same night at 2 o'clock in the morning, as a matter of fact, and rode their horses all the way, tremendous endurance, trading horses as they went where they could. They arrived at the Willie Handcart Company site, not with food and clothing, but with simply the good news that a rescue party was coming. One of the things that stands out most in my mind was that they arrived in the evening one day, and the next morning they buried 17 people.
And like Ephraim Hanks, it seems like the Lord has urged other people to come and help us. Sometimes on our hardest days, we've been joined by groups of kids from a high school or people who are just here for a day, and they just come and help us out on the hardest parts. I was staying at Guernsey Brown's place, and though the bed was comfortable enough, I could not sleep. Finally, I did drop off, but no sooner than I'd done it, I was waked up again. Somebody said, "Ephraim." That's my name. So I said, "Yes." Then the voice said, as clear as if I'd been face to face with a neighbor, "Ephraim, that handcart company is in trouble. Will you get them out?" Seems since I was a boy, the Lord has always been willing to keep in touch with me if I'd keep in touch with Him. This is the way I have it figured.
Despite the potential peril of leaving so late in the year, members of the Willie and Martin handcart companies unanimously voiced their desire to go westward. Though having been warned otherwise, they would not postpone the fulfillment of this dream.
Part of it is because you have the people had a great drive to come to Zion. They wanted to be where the leaders of the church were. Do I stay back in England And if I do, I don't have any money. I'll be in poorhouses. That's why most of these people had to go handcart, because they were poor. They come out and get as far as Nebraska and Iowa. Do we stay there? We don't have any work. So therefore, really, we're caught between a rock and a hard spot, and the only thing we could do is either stay and try to find some kind of a living, which would be difficult, or let's go to Zion.
6 major obstacles faced the Willie and Martin Handcart companies. First, they were late in leaving England, which delayed their arrival into America. Secondly, upon ultimately arriving in Iowa City, they found the handcarts had not been built, further delaying their departure for the Salt Lake Valley. Inasmuch as materials were limited, green wood was unwisely used in the building of the handcarts. This eventually proved disastrous when the carts began to collapse on the plains of Wyoming. Fourth, many children and elderly accompanied the 2 groups, slightly slowing the progress. When storms and buffalo stampedes frightened away their cattle, they faced the 5th critical obstacle, diminishing rations of food and starvation. 6th, having lightened the load within the weakening carts by discarding blankets and coats, the emigrant companies suddenly found themselves defenseless when the temperatures dropped below freezing in the storms of late autumn.
It was both. Tears, of course there were tears. There were so very, very many tears. But it was a trail of hope and vision and faith. And those who survived lived to become great people in the Utah area where they lived. They never forgot their ideal. They never forgot their suffering. But they carried on and built out of the ashes of that terribly tragic winter of 1856.
I have pulled a handcart with young folks, women, men. I have not heard anybody grumbling. In fact, it seems like most of the folks out here have that Indian philosophy that don't criticize anybody until you've walked a mile in their moccasins, or maybe in this case, until you've walked 1,200 miles in their moccasins. And therefore, we haven't gone that far, and I haven't heard any grumbling. Edwards and Carter had pulled a handcart together. Edwards was known as a constant grumbler, and this day, grumbling more than usual, he declared that he would rather die than pull anymore. Finally, his companion's patience gave out, and lifting up the front of the cart, he said angrily, "Get out and die then." Edwards staggered a few steps to the side of the road, and in a few moments, he was dead.
When the storms of October 1856 covered the highlands of Wyoming, little did the handcart companies realize that they would be thrust into one of the most significant dramas ever to unfold in the settling of the West. On October 19th, along this 200-mile corridor of the Mormon Trail, the Martin Handcart Company, near Casper, faced blizzard conditions and the icy waters of the Platte River. The Willie Company, 100 miles to the west, was camped just east of the frozen, jagged summit of Rocky Ridge, and the rescue parties recently sent from Salt Lake City struggled against the drifts of South Pass near the Continental Divide. The next 3 weeks would witness the convergence of their paths. Yet despite the assistance the rescue parties would eventually bring, the wintry blast would take its toll on the desperate pioneers.
We're supposed to learn that faith is a remarkable thing, that faith is more important than life itself, that a vision of a great cause carries with it tremendous undertakings. And our people pass through these undertakings.
One man, upon bringing his handcart to the riverbank, asked sorrowfully, "Have we got to go through there?" On being answered yes, he was so much affected that he was completely overcome. That was the last strain. His fortitude and manhood gave way. He exclaimed, "Oh dear, I can't go through that," and burst into tears. His wife, who was by his side, had the stouter heart of the two at that juncture, and she said soothingly, "Don't cry, Jimmy. I'll pull the cart for you."
let's just get a blood pressure.
It'll fit him.
Is it a large?
I feel very blessed to have the role as an EMT in this whole trek because I get to do service for people, and it has helped me incredibly. And I thank Heavenly Father over and over for that. I'm glad that He has everybody say, Nance, Nance, I need help, because then I just forget about maybe my mumble grumblers or my murmurs, you know, for that moment, because I can go help somebody, and that's what it's all about.
This serene setting along the banks of the Sweetwater River can hardly be considered dangerous in its present state. But in early November of 1856, this landscape was covered with more than a foot of snow, with temperatures dropping to as low as 11 degrees below zero. Chunks of ice floated along with the current. The river, which had been such a friend and provider to thousands of preceding pioneers, was now a formidable enemy.
You have a taste of what it must have been like, and your admiration for them grows tremendously, because you wonder how you would cope yourself under those circumstances. The Edward Martin Company was the last to leave, August the 25th. Sarah and her sweetheart were going to be married when they reached Zion, but an early winter set in and the snows continued. Sarah became so weak and ill with chills and fever that she was taken into one of the wagons. Her sweetheart also became very ill from hunger and exposure and developed pneumonia and died. Sarah took her long fringed shawl from her own almost freezing body and had the brethren wrap her sweetheart's body in it. She couldn't bear to think of his being buried with nothing to protect him from shoveled dirt and ravages of the weather. It has been said that the weather was so severe that his body was hung from a tree for others who followed to bury. We've crossed it in warm weather. We've had the dust to contend with. The only thing that must have kept them going was their faith, knowing that they needed to get to Zion.
Some 400 people traveled west with the Willie Handcart Company. Over 60 died along the way. Of the original 600 of the Martin Handcart Company, some 140 died short of the Salt Lake Valley. Though these particular two companies suffered the most, their gratitude for God's blessings was not diminished.
We study their lives, we study their story, and it will come to us. We just need to get acquainted with them and never forget them and live by the ideals which they live by, of industry, of thrift, of hard work, of vision, of faith.
Sometimes you try to just listen to what's actually going on, the grinding of the wheels, the incessant grinding. But then sometimes it's melodic. You think about the purpose. Think about the fact that in just a few weeks, it's all over. And then there's little imprints on time that these individuals have made that have walked all the way, because pulling a handcart's the toughest job in the whole wagon train.
Start off your birthday in Independence Rock, pull a handcart into Martin's Cove while you're surrounded with hundreds of handcarts. Never thought about it till they suggested it. So these are my friends. Rode with them from Kearney to the Wyoming border. Oh, it feels special. More so than riding the horse. I appreciate a lot more what they've got to do. Got on too many clothes, I can tell you that. But we'll just keep going down this road.
I'm just a little handcart. You pull me by your hand. I'm just a little handcart. With me, you'll cross the land. My wheels sing to you each day. I'm always in the mood. I'll travel 30 miles today.
I'm just a little handcart. With me you'll cross the land. My wheels sing out to you each day. I'm always in the mood. I'll travel 30 miles today and never ask for food. When your load in life is heavy, for your heart is on the mend, walk with me and turn to Jesus, for in each you have a friend. Sometimes I'm a shelter, and inside a baby sleeps. Sometimes I'm a silhouette that will cause your eyes to weep. I journeyed with your family a long, long time ago. We rolled across the prairie with friends and sometimes foe. As you walk through life beside me and see the turning wheels, look up from what you're doing and ask how others feel. When your load in life is heavy or your heart is on the mend, walk with me and turn to Jesus, for in each you